So you're playing Genshin, you do a 10 pull, and while you don't get a 5-star, you do get 4-star IFA. Now what do you get with IFA besides Auroran's good friend that also happens to be a vet? Well, IFA is a catalyst-wielding Anemo user who is kind of like the 4-star Mizuki, and in this video we are going to look at the basics of IFA. Now, like I just said, IFA is kind of like the 4-star version of Mizuki, meaning that he is going to be an on-field swirl driver. Now, he is from Natlan, meaning he's going to have some kind of overworld moving mechanics, so let's look at that first. If we use his skill, he is going to summon this little bird that he is going to grab onto, and he is also going to enter his Night Soul's Blessing state. In this form, you can kind of fly around, move around, stuff like that. Now, you might think that if we hit his normal attacks, he's going to plunge down, just like you do with all the other characters that kind of fly up, but it does not do that. In fact, if you are flying up and you do his normal attacks, it actually does a normal attack. It doesn't plunge. You have to hold E to plunge back down to the ground. And if you release E before you hit, then he will stop the plunge attack, grabbing back onto the bird. So you can use this to kind of traverse around Natlan. Now, if we go look at his normal attacks are going to do Anemo damage. He is a catalyst user. Even though he does kind of shoot guns, he is a catalyst user. So they are always going to be Anemo. We're not going to talk about physical shenanigans here with this. Catalyst user, always going to do their element. So his normal attacks are just going to do Anemo damage. They will be swirling any elements that are present. And then, of course, if you do a charge attack, it's going to do a charged version. It's going to do a bigger hit version of this. Now, if we use his skill, it doesn't do any damage. It does just kind of lift you up off the ground with the bird, but we can still do his normal and charge attacks. And this is kind of where his on-field driving kit comes into play. Whenever you've used your skill and you're going to be up in the air, doing these normal attacks are going to still cause the swirl reactions. It's actually going to cause a lot of swirl reactions. Doing the charge attack version or the hold version of the normal attacks are going to fire them continuously. You don't have to click every single time. Now, this does do Anemo damage and it does do swirl damage. However, it also will heal your entire party based off of his elemental mastery. So you're getting an on-field Anemo swirl driver and a team-wide healer. Now, you notice it's not healing a ton, but the other characters in this party are actually going to be all off-field. So IFA is really going to be the only one on-field. Now, he doesn't have any interruption to resistance, and he doesn't have really any resistance to interruption, but you can kind of keep away, dodge away, fly up above the enemies, things like that, and just try to not get hit by projectiles. Now, if we look at his passives before we get into his burst, his first one is going to have something called the Rescue Essentials Points effect, which is going to come from the Night Soul's Blessing points for the entire team, which is why it's great that we have Auroran in here. This will increase the swirl and specifically the electro charge damage dealt by all team members, which is why IFA and Auroran are going to go together very, very well as somebody like Yelan, or in this case, Xingqiu. And then, of course, Fischl is here doing Fischl stuff because Fischl will also be able to make use of this electro charge damage. If we look at a second passive, then whenever his nearby party members trigger Night Soul's Burst, which is just any time that a character does damage with a Night Soul's character in the team, his elemental mastery will be increased by 80 for 10 seconds. Now, you need to have multiple Natlan characters in your party to have a permanent uptime on this, but I think it's with 3. So I think with 3 is where you start getting to where it's below 10. I think it's at 14 seconds, 12 seconds, then 10 seconds. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct. Correct me in the comments if I am wrong. So we want to run him in a team that is going to have Electro Charge. Now, his burst is going to do something rather simple. It is simply going to cause an AoE Anemo damage, but then it's also going to kind of pull enemies in. It's not going to be a huge bit of crowd control, but it's just going to be a little bit of it. However, it will also apply a mark to the enemies if the enemy has an element on them, Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, or Electro. It will apply the Sedation mark. The Sedation mark is going to have a little bit of a lag behind it, and then it's going to do another instance of damage. Now, this little bit of crowd control or grouping is going to be very, very good for this team because of how Electro Charge works, right? It's going to bounce around between the enemies as long as they're close enough together and we're applying the elements. So having that little bit of CC to kind of bring enemies together is actually going to be very, very good. Auroran's also going to kind of help bring enemies together with his burst because it's going to kind of attract the enemies to move around his burst. And then, of course, Xingqiu applying the Hydro is going to be great. It's going to cause a lot of Electro Charge reactions between the enemies as we're kind of swirling and hitting them with IFA. So if you did get IFA and Auroran, or Oreo as I like to call him, on this band, then you can actually make a pretty decent team with them. Auroran's going to like Electro Charge, IFA's going to like Electro Charge. This is going to be a very, very good kind of combination between the two of them. Now that's going to be it for his kit. His kit's not super complicated, right? It is, like I said, a kind of a 4-star Mizuki. We don't have to like pick up all the stuff that we did with Mizuki, but he is going to cause a little bit of team-wide healing. He is going to be an on-field swirl driver, and partnering him with Auroran is going to be great. So kind of just keep those 3 things in mind. Now, For artifact sets, if you could not guess from the fact that he is going to be an on-field swirl driver, VV is going to be his best set. It's going to increase the Anemo damage, it's going to increase the swirl damage, and then it's also going to make the enemies weaker to the element swirled, being either electro or hydro in this instance. For the main sets, you're going to be doing all elemental mastery. Now, if you don't have a VV set or you don't have an extra VV set, then you can do a couple of other options. You do have Cinder City, which is going to be good. This is going to be much closer to kind of a support IFA than like an on-field driver IFA. And then of course you do have like a 2-piece gilded 2-piece Wanderer's Troop, where we're just going to try to stack as much elemental mastery on him as we can. Again, doing a full EM build to make sure that we're getting the most damage out of the swirl. Now for weapons, in this trial, he was actually using Wandering Evanstar, which is going to be a great weapon as well. Now, I don't have this weapon. I have been playing this game for a very, very long time, and I still do not have this weapon. So I have to look at other options, and in case you do too, let's look at some. Now, his best in slot weapon is a weapon I do not have, and it's actually going to be Mizuki's signature weapon. Of course it is, because like I said, they're very, very similar. But some other weapons that can work are going to be like Nahida signature weapon and Sitlali signature weapon. Both of these are going to get a ton of EM onto IFA to maximize that swirling damage. For some 4-star options, we do have something like Sacrificial Fragments, which is going to be phenomenal. It's a ton of EM and a chance to reset your skill, which can also be good to have him there doing more damage with his swirls. You can even use something like Mappa Mar, which is going to be craftable, which is going to be great. He'll be able to use the main stat and the passive. And then you even have 2 3-stars. Magic Guide can be good. It's going to get a ton of EM, and the passive can be good if you have him in an Electrocharge team. And then, of course, you do have something like Emerald Orb, which would probably be like the last option that I would do out of all of these mentioned. Now, Genshin has been kind of spicing things up, trying to give us a bunch of different options with Mizuki, and now the 4-star version of Mizuki being another on-field swirl dedicated swirl driver, which is actually great. And then allowing him to partner with Auroran, who in the lore, they should be able to go together, is actually a really, really cool theme, a really, really cool idea. I do like this team that they gave us in the trial, being IFA official, Xingqiu, and Auroran. This is a team that would be very, very free-to-play friendly, and I feel like it would still be able to kind of hold its own, right? So I do appreciate that Genshin is kind of giving us more 4-star options. That'll be a good kind of 4-star team that we can use, like Xingqiu, Fischl, Auroran, who a lot of people do have Fischl, and Xingqiu. Now Fischl and Xingqiu do often go to other teams because they are so good. But if you do like IFA, if you like having that on-field swirl driver team, then you can make a very, very free-to-play friendly team with him. Now that's going to be it for this video. Kuki has green hair, I have green hair, and I'll see you in the next one.